Hello, welcome back to Ecocentric. Time has come to start planting seeds for my transplants. The very first seed to be planted are the onions. I've got a new nice tray made, so we'll back up now and I'll show you, we'll give a recap on how I got to this point with this tray. I've got a new jig made for the next step of my experimenting with starting onions from seed. So 3 years ago I started onions from seed for the first time, and I did it the way the people do it traditionally. You plant them out in a flat, and when the time comes to transplant them into the garden, you just separate them all and you put them down in their respective little holes. I found they had significant transplant shock. So I wasn't happy with that. I thought they were all a goner. I had some of this, actually. I found it on the beach. So I took this, and with my wood burning tool, I melted all these little holes in it. And I filled those holes up with soil, and I put one seed in each hole. So thinking, well, now I don't have to separate the onions from each other. When it come time to plant, I poked all the plugs out with their onion seedlings. It was difficult to get the plugs out, and most of them fell apart. So I still had transplant shock, not as much as with pulling them apart from just setting them in the tray, but I did have some worrying transplant shock. So I wondered what I could do to fix that. And wandering around the yard, I found I had a couple of really long lengths of this piping. So I cut it up into little pieces. I widened the holes in the styrofoam enough to fit those pieces of pipe down in, and then I had my tray of styrofoam. This one has 112 pipes in it, and I found I could get the plugs out of this without them falling apart. So the plug came out in their entirety with the onion seedling in them, but it was difficult to get the plug out. Some of them did fall apart. So I made this. This is a piece of oak and a piece of spruce base, so that I can just lodge it down on the counter like that, and the piece of pipe just fits on the top. Now, I collect skills and tools so that I can be more self-reliant and use what I got. Hence the reason I have this thing. So here's a heat gun, 1500 watt. I bought it to another plastic recycling idea I had in mind, actually. But in thinking about it, I thought, yeah, I can use this here. So I got that little cone made. I need to put the glove on, because this is going to be hot. I have to run this on low and keep turning the jig so that the plastic is warmed evenly all the way around. If I run this on high, the plastic will get too soft and start to fold over on me. It would be tempting to run it on high and then, oh well, it's faster, but like I said, it will fold over on you, and then you've got your little cup you're trying to make wrecked. At first I could just hold the gun steady and just spin the piece, but when it gets higher you have to make sure that the full length of what you're stretching has been worn. So you have to move the gun up and down the length of the pipe. Almost. There, that's as far as I'm putting it. So the pipe is down flush with the top of my little jig there. Put my eating gun back on the hook I've got there for it. You leave it on for a couple of seconds. Let it cool just a bit. And then pull it off. Now this is hot, and you see it's hot enough that my gloves actually deform the plastic. You can see the imprint from my gloves. Now we have a cup that flares out from the bottom to the top, and it'll stand nicely. Now it's standing a little slanted to the side, and if you want to make it pretty it up, just take a razor blade and trim off the rough parts and level off that base piece. Sometimes even if you've cut it right initially, that it will be a little slanted because the top heat, you warmed up the top and then you had to push down on it. And then see, the top is not beautiful, it's a little bit of ragged. You don't have to remove that, but if you want, you can take your razor blade and just skim around. And there, when I stuff the soil in there and take it up, it won't fall out the bottom. The compression will hold it in, and as soon as I poke my finger in there, as soon as it starts to move, the entire plug will lose its friction on the wall, and it should come out a lot easier. And when you got the seedling in there, then it will be easier still. That's why when you buy the tray, they're flared out like that, to make it easier for it to get the plug out. I might try this with some other seedlings besides onions as well. Set up like this, I can watch a podcast or do something else. If I was doing some cooking that I had to wait for, I can do a few of these at a time, and so on, just like the ladies used to do when they get around talking and knitting at the same time. So I'm going to make a few hundred of these now, and then we'll decide on exactly how I'm going to make the trays for them. After making a few, I realized that it's better to actually leave them on here until they're fairly cool. So it's still hot there now, and I'll just go about and do some computer work or some other little thing while I'm waiting for that to cool, and then I switch back and forth between making the cups and doing whatever else I have here to do. The reason being, when I took them off when they were still hot, the plastic would shrink again, and it wouldn't be the same size as it's sitting there now. Plus it could deform when I actually the pressure of taking them off. Now that's cool enough. See, it's fairly firm. And the thing is, I can take my little finger now, you see, I can poke it right down to the bottom, and do that and make it nice and clean inside. And this should be a perfect cup for growing the little seedlings at first. Now that I've done quite a few of these, I'm going to do another clip that I know what I'm doing. Hang that back up, turn this upside down on this bearing so that I can put it in like that. And I've got to set it back and wait for it to cool and then take it off. This was one of the pieces of styrofoam that I picked up on the beach years ago now. And I was able to cut it, sand it smooth. And I have several of the pieces put in here. When I'm done, it's going to be 220 pieces. Of course, with my wood burning tool again. I can just melt down through, and I have to melt it out enough so that the piece goes down flush. Like so. What I'm trying to do is actually put the hole there, and it's not quite big enough, but before it stops melting, put that piece down, and then it'll form, hopefully, right to the shape of the piece of pipe I have here. Now I'm going to have to turn the camera off because I got to turn the fan on to blow away this fumes I'm making, and that's just going to make it too much of a noise on the camera, and I'll finish this up. And so that's it now. I've got this nice tray here with the really deep cells for doing onion starts, 220 cells. I am though going to try and see what the onion starch will do in this professional tray. So this is one I bought, but the amount of soil that's going to be in one of these, you see the difference in height. So it's probably only half as much soil per cell here. So we'll see if the onions does well in the professional trays if you have these and want to use them. I have 6 different varieties of onions. Red Wethersfield, Alyssa Craig, Rosa di Milano, and Kelsey. These are the ones I collected, and if you've seen my other video, I had very poor germination with the red spring onion, and even worse with the Australian brown. So I'm going to sprinkle these seeds into these containers just like most people do, and see what comes up. Here I'll put 1 seed in each one. This is 200, so I'll have 100 seeds of each of Kelsey and Rosa di Milano. And then I'll have 110 seeds in of Alyssa Craig and Red Wethersfield. This is just sifted compost I use here. You take and you run it through a 1/4-inch sieve so that you get all the big lumps out, eh? I'm going to put it up on top of this so that I can do the edges without making a mess on the table. It's just a smooth perch, so I poke down every one now to make sure that the soil is right down to the bottom. That is important if you're using a wicking mat as your watering source. just put a light coating over the top again. I left a little bit of a hedge here, see, so that I can fill these up without really making a big mess. The reason for doing that is so that I can see where the cells are easier and not have a bunch of soil sitting on top of the setup here. Put some soil in these for those Hiffy seed sets. I made my aluminum signs with my punches, so Red Wethersfield and Alyssa Craig. So I'll put them two together, that way I'll know that Red Wethersfield's going that way, Alyssa Craig is going that way. Australian Brown, he's going in one of those. Kelsey, Red Spring going the other one. And Rosa di Milano. Okay, Red Wethersfield. That's as high up as this chair goes, but I kind of want to sit down and do this. There, that's 110 Red Wethersfield. Now I gotta go back over and make sure each one is poked under the soil. Black seeds are not easy to see on top of soil, but it's only a little tiny cell, so it's not like you have a big area to look over. And I'll do that with the other three here, and then I'll be back. Now I have my 200 cell flats set out. Let's zoom this into right there. As I said, the Red Spring and the Australian Brown had very poor germination on my collected seeds. So when you're doing this type of thing, it's best to make sure you've got your soil nice and flat, so that it makes it easier to spread the seeds out evenly. So you just pat it smooth and flat. And then it should be fairly easy to get a even distribution. This is the Australian Brown over here, and just basically shake the seeds out. I think that's all I'll put in there. I'll take the Red Springs. Okay. Now you can see the onion seeds sprinkle it out over this red spring. And there's your Australian brown. Don't know if I had to record on. I put a little bit more soil over the top of the onions in here, and I put it down just barely enough so that the seeds are covered. And now, of course, you need a waterer with a really fine tip on it, and give them a sprinkling. Enough. Now I shall bring them out to the wicking mat. My new cell block just fits on the shells that I have made, so that's nice. The heat mat under here is currently on because I have the sea buckthorn over here. They are supposed to be ready to grow now according to instructions. So there's the other tray, and of course the two ones that we don't know how many are going to grow. So there we are, onions started. Don't forget to hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed so that you can get notified when I do an update on this and my future garden projects. And I shall see you in the next video.